The Rig Veda, as we have seen, does not contain distinct references to a day and a night of 6 months' duration, though the deficiency is more than made up by the parallel passages from the Iranian scriptures. But in the case of the dawn, the long, continuous dawn with its revolving splendors, which is the special characteristic of the North Pole, there is, fortunately, no such difficulty. Uṣhas, or the goddess of dawn, is the most important and a favorite Vedic deity, and mentioned more than 300 times, sometimes in the singular, sometimes in the plural. These hymns, according to Muir, are amongst the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful, in the entire collection, and the deity to which they are addressed is considered by MacDonald to be the most graceful creation of Vedic poetry, there being no more charming figure in the descriptive religious lyrics of any other literature. In short, Uṣhas, or the goddess of dawn, is described in the Rig Veda hymns with more than the usual fullness, and what is still more important for our purpose is that the physical character of the deity is not, in the least, obscured by the description or the personification in the hymns. Here, therefore, we have fine opportunity of proving the validity of our theory by showing, if possible, that the oldest description of the dawn is really polar in character. A priori, it does not look probable that the Vedic poets could have gone into such rapture over a short-lived dawn of tropical or temperate zone, or that so much anxiety about the coming dawn should have been evinced, simply because the Vedic bards had no electric light or candles to use during the short night of less than 24 hours. But the dawn hymns have not, as yet, been examined from this standpoint. It seems to have been tacitly assumed by all interpreters of the Vedas, Eastern and Western, that the Uṣhas of the Rig Veda can be no other than the dawn with which we're familiar at the tropical or temperate zone. That Yashka and Sayana thought so is natural enough, but even the Western scholars have taken the same view, probably under the influence of the theory that the plateau of Central Asia was the original home of the ancient race. Therefore, several expressions in the dawn hymns, which would have otherwise suggested the inquiry regarding the physical or astronomical character of the Vedic dawn, would have been ignored or somehow explained away by the scholars, who would certainly have thrown more light on the subject had they not been under the influence of these assumptions mentioned above. It is with passages like these that we're chiefly concerned, and we shall presently see that if these are interpreted in a natural way, they fully establish the polar nature of the Vedic dawn. The first hint regarding the long duration of the Vedic dawn is obtained from the Aitareya Brahmana 4.7. Before commencing the Gavaim Ayana sacrifice, there's a long recitation of not less than 1,000 verses, to be cited by the Hotri priests. This Ashvina Shastra, as it is called, is addressed to Agni, Uṣhas, and Ashvins, which deities rule at the end of the night and the commencement of the day. It is the longest recitation to be recited by the Hotri, and the time for reciting it is after midnight, when the darkness of the night is about to be relieved by the light of dawn. The same period of time is referred to also in the Rig Veda 7:67, 2 and 3. The Shastra is too long that the Hotri, who has to recite it, is directed to refresh himself by drinking beforehand melted butter after sacrificing thrice a little of it. He ought to eat ghee, observes Aitareya Brahma, before he commences repeating, just as in this world a cart or carriage goes well if it is smeared with oil. Thus his repeating proceeds well if he is smeared with ghee by eating it. It's evident that if such a recitation is to be finished before the rising of the sun, either the Hotri must commence his task soon after midnight when it is dark, or the duration of the dawn must then have been sufficiently long enough to enable the priest to finish his recitation in time after commencing to recite it on the first appearance of light in the horizon, as directed. The first supposition is out of the question, as it is expressly laid down that the Shastra is not to be recited until the darkness of the night is relieved by light. So between the first appearance of light and the rise of the sun, there must have been, in those days, time enough to recite a long laudatory song of not less than 1,000 verses. Nay, in the Taittiriya Samhita, we are told that sometimes the recitation of the Shastra, though commenced at the proper time, ended long before sunrise, and in that case, the Samhita requires that a certain animal sacrifice be performed. In such a case, the recitation should be continued up to sunrise by reciting other hymns, while Apastmabha, after mentioning the sacrifice referred to in the Taittiriya Samhita, adds that all the 10 mandalas of the Rig Veda may be recited if necessary in such a case. It's evident from this that the actual rising of the sun above the horizon was a phenomenon often delayed beyond expectation. In those days, and in several places in the Taittiriya Samhita, we are told that the devas had to perform a prayashita before the sun did not shine as expected. Another indication of the long duration of the dawn is furnished by the Taittiriya Samhita 8:2-20. 7 oblations are here mentioned, 1 to the Uṣhas, 1 to Vyuṣhṭî, 1 to Udeshyat, 1 to Udyat, 1 to Udita, 1 to Sugvara, and 1 to Loka. 5 of these are evidently intended for the dawn in its 5 forms. The Taittiriya Brahmana explains the first 2, to Uṣhas and Vyuṣhṭî, are referring to dawn and sunrise rather than to night and day, for according to the Brahmana, Uṣhas is night and Vyuṣhṭî is day. But even though we may accept this as correct and we take Uṣhas and Vyuṣhṭî to be representative of night and day because the former signalizes the end of night and the latter the beginning of day, still we have to account for these 3 oblations. 1 to the dawn about to rise, Udashat, 1 to the rising dawn, Udyat, and 1 to the dawn that is risen, Udita. The first 2 of which are, according to the Taittiriya Brahmana, to be offered before the rising of the sun. Now the dawn in the tropical zone is so short that a 3-fold distinction between the dawn about to rise, the dawn which is rising, and the one which is risen or full-blown is a distinction without difference. We must, therefore, hold that the dawn which admitted such manifold division for the practical purpose of sacrifice was a long dawn. The 3-fold division of the dawn does not seem to be unknown to the poets of the Rig Veda, for in 8:41:3, Varuna's dear ones are said to have prospered the 3 dawns for him, and the phrase in 174:7, 3 dew-lighted dawns, also appears to be referred to. There are other passages in the Rig Veda where the dawn is asked not to delay or tarry long, lest it might be scorched like a thief by the sun. And in 2:15:6, the steeds of the dawn are said to be slow, showing that the people were sometimes tired to see the dawn lingering long on the horizon. But a still more remarkable statement is found in 1:13:13, where the poet distinctly asserts, "The goddess Uṣhas dawned continually or perpetually in former days," and the adjective "the most long-lasting" is applied to the dawn in 1:18:11. Again, the very existence and use of 2 such words as Uṣhas and Vyuṣhṭî is, by itself, proof of the long duration of the dawn, for if the dawn was brief, there was no practical necessity of speaking of the full-blown state of the dawn, as has been done several times in the Rig Veda. The expression Uṣhas Vyuṣhṭî occurs very often in the Rig Veda and has been translated by the phrase, "on the flashing forth of dawn." But no one seems to have raised the question why 2 separate words, one of which was derived from the other simply by prefixing the preposition V, should be used in this connection. Words are made to denote ideas, and if Uṣhas and Vyuṣhṭî are not required to denote 2 distinct phenomena, no one, especially in those early days, would have cared to use a phrase which, for all ordinary purposes, was superfluously cumbrous.